Okay, guys, we're back. Part 2. We're going to go from Erikson to Jean Piaget. Okay? So Jean Piaget was a Swiss philosopher and psychologist. From our textbook, he defines the word schemata up here. It equals the mental representations or concepts. Then he says there's adaptation, mentally organizing what they perceive in their environment. Then he says there's a process of assimilation. The process of taking in new information and adding it to what the child already knows. So when the child is learning, they're going through schemata. Then they have an adaptation process where they're mentally organizing what they're taking in or perceiving from their environment. Then an assimilation occurs where that new information, they're adding it to what they've already learned. Then they have accommodation. So they adjust, there's adjusting what is already known to the new information, how you organize the thoughts and develop intellectually. Intellectually, as I put down here, you have cognitive, that's one of our word wall words, equals thinking, equals mental, thinking, mental process of our brain when we're learning, and then that is the same as intellectual. So those all mean the same. He says in early childhood years, which is birth up to age 8, we have sensory motor, pre-operational, and concrete operations. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of information on those. The sensory motor is birth to 2 years. Knowledge develops through sensory and motor ability. So let's think about our infants. What do our infants do? Everything sensory, right? They use their senses, but everything goes to their mouth, right? They taste and touch with their mouth more than anything else when they're first born. So they need to be interacting with safe things that they can be putting up to their mouth. We know this. So we have to make sure they don't have small pieces and that things are safe for them to do so. Then from ages 2 to 7, the pre-operational years, the knowledge is represented by language. So that's reading, having discussions with them about what we're reading, singing, just in an enriched language learning environment. Mental imagery. That's why I taught you guys the rebus assignments where you add images to the words of your rules and or healthy cooking recipe. And that way they're able to take the words and the images and create symbolic thoughts. Some children aren't able to read a book yet, but you can show them a page, an illustration, and ask them what they think. And they're going to be able to gather some information based on that. They might be able to come up with some of the words that are describing that story. Concrete operations is our children around age 7 up to age 12. They begin to reason logically about concrete objects. Okay, so they need visuals, they need to see things concretely. Okay, it can't be abstract. It can't be something like, they can't understand something going on in another city they've never been to. It's not concrete enough for them. So logical reasoning begins. Okay, so that is Piaget. All right, and now we're going to move on to our next theorist. We're moving. Okay, so this guy is Lev Vygotsky. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. Okay. Lev Vygotsky was a Russian and a non-religious Jewish family. During this time, we have to understand that like the World War I, World War II era, was going on. And so that was a very important thing to take note of. This is a picture of Mr. Vygotsky. To me, he's one of the founding fathers. He studied Piaget, and then developed his theory off of Piaget. So he agreed with Piaget, but he felt like Piaget was missing something. So that's what we're going to talk about, what he added. They say that he's one of the founding fathers, but, I believe that he is one of the founding fathers that has a mixed ethnicity. So like Piaget, who Vygotsky studied under, both believe knowledge, I'm right here, is built on previous experiences or previous knowledge. Okay, so if you've ever done a KWL chart in your classes, it's like, what do I know about this concept? What do I want to know? So then you come up with questions and then you fill out what you learned. So it's like a before and an after. The KWL was developed from Vygotsky's theory. Vygotsky. Vygotsky. He believed children learn socially and culturally. So learning is not just from their family, right? That's their culture, but also from their social environment, their friends, their school. He says that we go through self-talk. Self-talk can be very important. That's some of the things that we do with mindfulness. We can either build ourselves up with self-talk or we can tear ourselves down. We can convince ourselves that something's too difficult to learn, or we can convince ourselves to keep trying. So that's the self-talk process. He says that we have a zone of proximal development. Okay, so that's another term that he introduced us to. The zone of proximal development is very important to his theory. Okay, so he says that what we learn from more knowledgeable others, so from people in our life that are more knowledgeable, could be peers and adults who have a better understanding and concept of higher level ability than we do as the learner, or the child does as the learner. So he said the zone of proximal development is the area where the child or the person is most sensitive to learning from the peers and the adults who know more about the subject. So it's like it goes through a scaffolding process. So when you're learning something new, you're going to start down here at the bottom step or the bottom of a ladder, right? And then we have to scaffold experiences, from peers and adults, and you begin to move up to understanding. Okay? So it's a cooperative learning process for your environment. So he's talking about like when we're in the classroom and we're together and where we've learned those terms where some of you are independent upon others, you're feel independent. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about that learning process. Okay. So we are going to take a break there and we'll finish discussing a couple of the other founding fathers in the next video.